Coin traders, what is going on? Thanks for joining me for the show. Internet Computer looking at ICP on that ticker. Like a lot of the other cryptos right now, and altcoins specifically, looking at a little bit of consolidation period here, but we knew that a sell-off was ultimately coming. Best case scenario right now, forming this longer-term consolidation. So this is exactly what we have been talking about and wanting to see, especially when we have been maintaining the trend on top of exponential moving average support, specifically in between the 26 here for the daily and also the 50. So very good looking range right now, especially sitting on top of previous level of resistance on the price here for ICP. So a lot of good things to be looking at. So we did have our peak amount of bearish sell-off volume here coming in off the high. Pretty significant pullback actually, and we know that with the pullback being over 32%, this is just a huge amount of retracement here without any sort of bullish reprieve. Just immediate flush. So we know typically when we do see big flushes like what happened, that's pretty much a very good topping signal and indicator, knowing that one bearish candle can knock out just a bunch of nice bullish upside trading with nice upside volume here and increasing a bullish volume as well. So as we saw, even though we did have a little bit of bounce with some lower shadows here, confirming support in between the 50 period and the 26, we do know that it was very likely in that instance we were going to set up and see that lower high just based off of the amount of retracement and actually putting in a new lower low on the daily chart. So we were looking at defending barely on top of this lower low. For that on the price, we're looking at 10,398, and we actually got down to 10,636. So did lead to a little bit of a drop in support, but like we talked about, very nice defense of a close. In fact, we actually had a pretty nice closing level and range here for a zone of support coming in just above the price level at 11,705 down to about 11,774. So pretty big range here that we do have for support. Big upside wicks on these previous candles for that resistance and also big downside shadow. So if we look at the overall range, very big range and zone that we're seeing a lot of sideways price chop trading, but now looking to confirm and defend a little bit more support on top of that region and level as well, especially after we know that some of the most recent pullbacks has been pretty minimal compared to the two bullish days of upside. So a little bit more of that confirmation signal that this overall pattern is just going to start to continue to tighten, most expectedly, especially as these exponential moving averages do continue to run up. And we do get a little bit tighter here on the EMA support band. So yeah, last bit of bearish trading, pretty small volume. Actually had pretty small bullish volume as well coming in, but not a lot of sustainment and increasing selling pressure, especially as we do have Bitcoin hitting all-time highs and things like that. So we know that just typically this is going to be a little bit longer of a sideways period, why Bitcoin does continue to rally, which does increase the dominance here. So going to be looking for that to actually pull back, likely expecting altcoins to actually start to take off here. And so actually did make a tweet regarding the altcoin markets here a couple hours ago, said the altcoin market space is going to go to a $4 trillion market cap this cycle. So if we actually want to go ahead and look at what that could potentially be, we're looking at, so we're going to call this effectively total 2. Now we are at 1.5 trillion right now. So not necessarily that much more upside to get to that level, but overall, it's still a pretty nice rally to the upside, so that would be pretty much right around this point. So if we actually look at current market cap of about 1.5 trillion to the upside of about 4 trillion, 162 or about a 2.6x return from here. Now, likely in this instance, we're still going to see altcoins pull back just a little bit because especially after a strong month and a half to about a month or so, do know very nice upside, need to see this continuation pullback. So a little bit more of downside still expected for a lot of the rest of the crypto space and not necessarily expecting that to slow down, but overall looking very good for a nice bull cycle here. And I wouldn't be surprised to actually see the altcoin market cap get to about 4 trillion. So the previous all-time high we were looking at before the most recent market cap all-time high, which did come in about 1.7 trillion, was right about 471 billion. So from there to the high that we actually got to, it's about 259% as well. So a very close target to the upside in terms of a percentage growth increase. And that's also from the all-time high. So very nice to think that we could be looking at a $4 trillion market cap. Now, one of the things people need to be aware of is that we're actually looking at a huge amount of dilution across all altcoins just because there's been so many altcoins being created lately, so many new projects, so many garbage projects, so many scam projects, meme coins, you get the picture. So picture all of that funds being distributed, but still, nonetheless, we do have great potential to see a lot of these altcoins just absolutely shoot up and do a lot of growth potential that we're probably not going to see out of Bitcoin, because for Bitcoin to double, we actually have to see Bitcoin go from over 100K right now to over 200K. So we're talking about market cap for Bitcoin going from about 2 trillion all the way up to about 4 trillion here in order to see a $200,000. So basically, we'd be looking at the market cap that I think we're going to get to for altcoins for the high of the cycle here at least. Compare that to just Bitcoin, and that's what you need just to see your money double. So definitely a lot more potential right now, especially after the growth of Bitcoin. And that's kind of one of the reasons too why we do see a lot of money flow from Bitcoin and actually do start to see the altcoins pick up, because after the hype subsides for Bitcoin and all the euphoria for its growth and new all-time highs, that's when people start to realize real potential is in a lot more of these speculative growth and use case projects and utility coins. And that's where we do start to get this massive influx of money into the altcoin space and a huge alt season, which is exactly what we want to see, and definitely going to help see that for the growth here, longer term growth for Internet Computer. So anyway, just so happens that we are on the weekly chart right now, still looking at a potential for a little bit more pullback, especially after this week. So could still see the rest of this week and also next week lead to a little bit more sideways pullback consolidation here. And we are still sitting above a very nice support line here coming in about the $11 level. So even if we do pull back to that region, still going to be a pretty good sign and exactly what we want for a longer term growth. So for example, from current prices right now, right around 12.16, we would be potentially looking at a pullback of about 10%. So not that much, especially allowing these exponential moving averages to rally, pull back, kick off, continue once again, or go into a little bit more longer term consolidation, which wouldn't be impossible, especially as we start Q1 of 2025, following a great cycle so far, and then Q2 continuing on for very nice explosive growth into the spring and summer of 2025. So 4-hour chart for Internet Computer looking actually pretty good given this pullback so far right now. And this is actually starting to look a little bit more like a continuation pattern to the upside, holding a higher low compared to what we were looking at in terms of the close at about 1140. So that's going to be one of the downside price targets we're actually looking at. But right now, especially with a lot of these big upside wicks, we actually do have a lot of buying potential, kind of getting stuff down pretty quick. So we know that there's not a lot of sustained. It's probably quick market buy orders that do actually create a lot of these big upside wicks here. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because especially as we do have a lot of chop after putting in a bottom, setting a higher low, we know that potential is just to pull back and actually set a higher low. Realistically, whether or not we can actually put in a higher high and start to change the trend and break out from this on the longer term is going to be what the bulls have to actually prove right now, because as it is right now, we're probably going to look most likely like we're setting up in a little bit more of that longer term equilibrium until we can find enough bullish volume and reason to actually see that bullish breakout across the rest of crypto, in addition to what we're seeing and experiencing and expecting to for Internet Computer. So looking at the 1 hour now, this does kind of highlight this big upside move on the current 1 hour candle. Typically on these type of setups, we don't see huge upside pumps and upside wicks if they are consecutive and consistent to actually lead to then a continued downside action. So more or less, this is a little bit of a signal that probably we're going to be looking at the bottom coming in as that higher low over the point which we already saw. And about the 1140 is kind of what we wanted to see, like we talked about for about the 4 hour close. Hourly close, we're going to be looking at about 1088. But anyway, nonetheless, regardless, we're still looking at very good signs, especially as we do continue to see a lot of buying pushing prices up, even if we do get a quick sell-off and rejection flush as the order book starts to fill up on the downside. So not a lot of just immediate selling pressure, because like we said, we do have a lot of buying eating up the order book, pushing this price up. But because the order book typically doesn't fill up as fast on the upside, and especially on downside moves like this, we're actually seeing the capability of the bears to, with low volume, actually shoot this candle all the way back down, forming this big major wick. So it does look a little bit more nasty. But if we dive into what's actually happening behind this candle, it's a little bit more of a good sign, especially when we look at the amount of hourly volume that actually came in to kind of top out and close the peak amount of pullback here on this retracement. So speaking of retracement, if we actually look at a Fibonacci from the low of this move, to the high. We're actually looking at a pullback right around the 61.8% retracement here on this Fibonacci. So a good level to actually be looking at a pullback for. And especially, we do find a lot of strong support between the 61.8 and the 78.6. So a lot of great signs and signals here to lead us to thinking that pretty much we are going to be finding a bottom and a little bit more of that expectation that this is going to be an extremely strong zone, putting in a higher low here and continuing an otherwise tightening range for this ICP chart. Looking at the 4-day, don't typically look at this too much. Just want to point out how we're seeing the inside bars here over the last 3 candles here, working on the 4th candle. Just started it, so about 4 days left to close. But overall, we can see that the 3 previous candles, the following candles, did fit within the trading range, price ranges of the previous candle, forming those inside bars, which is always that consolidation type pattern. And so current one's still forming that. If we do actually see it break out above a high of 13.77 or below a low of 11.987, that'll be a breakout, which pretty much is going to be a confirmation of that signal and a direction. So if we actually break above a high, for example, of 1377, that's going to be a pretty big sign that we're likely going to see a little bit more of that bullish upside pressure. And conversely, on the bearish side, if we do break below that low of 11.987, that's pretty much going to be a sign and signal that we're pretty much going to be looking at a little bit more of that downside pressure, where we're going to need to see a lot of dip buying, making these big downside shadows, kind of like what we experienced, and also needing to actually form support on top of this 12-period EMA, kind of like the bulls have already found. So I think right now it's just kind of in a patient stagnating spot, a little bit frustrating since we know that after such big long periods of just kind of nothingness and we get a little bit of excitement, now we're going back to that time period where we're not really seeing much happening and there is a little bit more of that uncertainty. But just overall know that this is an extremely bullish looking setup here on the longer term. High, higher, low, now looking to get into this big consolidation. If we want to look at this as kind of like a mini Wyckoff, we can actually look at this as being kind of the accumulation period here. Very nice upside move for that phase D consolidation leading to that phase E breakout, which then if we look at this as a longer picture, bigger Wyckoff, very much what we're at right now and kind of the last year or so has been more or less that longer term phase D, looking for that big phase E breakout. So it's coming on both chart setups, and always zoom out because we do have great things in store. But yeah, nonetheless, this is still a very, very bullish looking setup, especially with a lot of the charts being in a completely bullish formation on all of these signals and indicators showing that the trend and path of least resistance is still heading to the upside. But yeah, as always, do love hearing everyone's thoughts, predictions, issues, disagreements, all that stuff down in the comments sections below. If you have not done so yet, drop me a line or feel free once again to reach out over on Twitter here. Do chat a lot. @coin_trades is the handle. Looking forward to seeing you over on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, with that, that is going to wrap up the show for now on Internet Computer ICP. If you did enjoy it, please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you have not done so just yet. Do appreciate all the continuous love and support, as always, does mean so much. That's it for now, though, so stay safe, take care, coin traders, and I'll catch you back in the next video.